You deserve better than what they gave you.
No one's ever said that to me before.
Why do you act like you don't need anyone?
Because needing people hurts. Why did you help me last night?
Because nobody else was going to.
He carried his drunk boss home in silence. The next morning, she knocked on his door with tears in her eyes, the morning after Ryan Calloway had learned early in life that the world doesn't slow down for broken people. It hadn't slowed down when his wife walked out 3 years ago, leaving behind a 2-year-old daughter and a note that said, "I'm not built for this." It hadn't slowed down when he'd taken a second job just to keep the lights on. And it certainly hadn't slowed down when he showed up to his new position at Hargrove and Associates, the most prestigious marketing firm in downtown Chicago, only to realize his boss was the most intimidating woman he had ever encountered. Victoria Hargrove didn't just run the company. She was the company. 40 hours a week minimum, always the first in and the last out, a coffee in one hand and a strategy deck in the other. She wore tailored blazers like armor and spoke with the kind of precision that left no room for excuses. Everyone on the team was slightly afraid of her. Ryan was no exception. But he respected her. That distinction mattered. It was a Thursday evening in late October when everything changed. The office holiday party had been moved up due to a venue conflict, which meant cocktails and catered appetizers at 7 o'clock on a night Ryan had specifically arranged his neighbor Mrs. Patterson to babysit his daughter Lily. He attended out of obligation, nursed a single glass of sparkling water, and kept mostly to the edges of the room. He noticed Victoria around 9. She was standing near the bar, still in her work blazer, laughing at something a colleague had said, but the laugh was slightly off, too loose. Her posture, usually impossibly straight, had softened. Ryan did a quiet count. She'd had at least 4 drinks in the hour he'd been watching the room, and the way she was gripping the edge of the bar told him she wasn't feeling entirely steady. He wasn't going to say anything. It wasn't his place. But then he saw Marcus Webb, senior account director, the kind of man who wore his ego like cologne, slide up next to her, hand already moving toward the small of her back. Ryan had heard stories about Marcus. Everyone had. He set down his water glass and walked over. "Victoria," he said it casually, like they were mid-conversation. "Ready to go over those Langford projections? I've got the revised deck on my laptop." She blinked at him, and for a split second he saw something unguarded in her eyes. Confusion, then recognition, then quiet relief. "Right," she said, straightening. "Yes, those projections." Marcus pulled back, annoyed. Ryan didn't acknowledge him. He simply fell into step beside Victoria and steered them both toward the hallway. Once they were clear of the crowd, Victoria exhaled slowly. "I wasn't drunk." "I know," Ryan said. She looked at him sideways. "I had maybe 4 drinks in an hour on what I'm guessing was an empty stomach." He wasn't accusing her, he was just stating facts. "I have a daughter, I count things." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "Marcus is harmless." Ryan said nothing, which was answer enough. They stood in the lobby while he ordered her an Uber. She tried to protest, said she was fine, said she'd call her own car, said she didn't need anyone looking after her. But somewhere between the 3rd and 4th sentence, she leaned slightly against the wall and closed her eyes for just a second too long. "I'm going with you," Ryan said. "You don't have to. I have a daughter at home. I know what it looks like when someone needs 5 more minutes before they're safe to be alone." He said it gently. "Let me make sure you get inside." She didn't argue after that. The ride to her apartment building was mostly quiet. She told him her floor number and unit, out of what seemed like muscle memory. In the elevator, she stood with her arms crossed, not out of coldness, but out of a kind of dignity she was working to maintain. He respected that too. At her door, she fumbled with her keys for longer than she wanted to. He didn't take them from her. He just waited. When it finally opened, she turned to look at him. In the soft light of the hallway, without the blazer and the conference room and the reputation, she looked younger, more tired, more human. "You didn't have to do this," she said. "I know. Most people would have just left. Most people aren't fathers," he said simply. Good night, Victoria. He waited until he heard the lock click from the inside before he turned and walked back to the elevator. He didn't sleep well, not because of Victoria, or not entirely. It was Lily who woke him at 2 a.m. with a nightmare, and by the time he'd settled her back down and returned to his own bed, his mind was already running through the morning. He had a presentation at 9. He needed coffee. He needed to stop thinking about the look on Victoria Hargrove's face when she said most people would have just left. He was in the middle of making Lily's breakfast, scrambled eggs, the only thing she'd reliably eat, when his phone buzzed with an unknown number. "This is Victoria. Can we talk?" "Not at the office." He stared at the message for a long moment. "Sure. Where?" She named a coffee shop 2 blocks from his apartment. He arranged for Mrs. Patterson to come over an hour early, kissed Lily on the forehead, and went. Victoria was already there when he arrived, sitting at a corner table with both hands wrapped around a ceramic mug. She'd traded the blazer for a cream-colored floral cardigan, and her hair was down, soft waves instead of the sleek professional style he was used to. She looked up when he walked in, and something in her expression shifted, like she'd been rehearsing something and had just decided to throw out the script. He sat down across from her. "I wanted to apologize," she said, "and to explain. You don't owe me an explanation." "No, but I owe you an apology." She met his eyes. "I put you in an uncomfortable position last night. You had to intervene on my behalf, escort me home, wait to make sure I was safe, and none of that was your responsibility. I didn't see it as a burden. That makes it worse, actually." She gave a short, wry, almost smile. "People who do kind things without expecting anything in return are much harder to dismiss." Ryan looked at her carefully. "Is that what you were planning to do? Dismiss it?" "I was going to pretend it hadn't happened," she admitted. "That's what I usually do. Someone sees something I didn't mean for them to see, and I just recalibrate, move on, control the narrative." He was quiet, letting her continue. "But you saw me last night and you didn't use it. You didn't make it weird. You didn't make me feel stupid." She paused. "You just made sure I was safe and then left, like that was normal, like I deserved that." Something in her voice cracked very slightly on the last 4 words. Not enough to break, but enough for him to hear. "You do deserve that," he said. She looked down at her mug. "My ex-husband used to say I didn't know how to be vulnerable, that I was too controlled, too professional, that I'd built so many walls nobody could reach me." A pause. He wasn't entirely wrong. Being self-sufficient isn't a character flaw. It becomes one when it's the only thing you know how to be. She looked up. "I don't actually drink much. Last night I had a hard call with a client who's pulling a contract we've spent 8 months building. I was trying to shake it off. I misjudged." "That's allowed. Not for me," she said it matter-of-factly, not with self-pity. "I'm the CEO. I set the standard. I can't afford to misjudge." "You're also a person," Ryan said. "Those 2 things aren't mutually exclusive." She studied him for a long moment. "You have a daughter." "Lily, she's 5. You raising her alone? 3 years now." He kept his voice even. "Her mom left. It was complicated, but Lily is the best thing I've ever done, so." He shrugged. "You figure it out." Victoria was quiet for a moment. Then she said softly, "Doesn't it frighten you, being the only one?" "Every single day." He held her gaze. "But fear doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It just means you care about getting it right." Something moved across her face, slow, careful, like a door opening that hadn't been opened in a long time. They sat in that coffee shop for 2 hours. She told him about the client. He told her about Lily's current obsession with dinosaurs. She asked questions, real ones, not polite ones, and listened to the answers with the same intensity she brought to quarterly reviews. He noticed she laughed differently when she wasn't in the office. Easier, less managed. When they finally stood to leave, she pulled on her coat and said, "I want you to know this doesn't change anything at work. I know. You'll still get the same standards, same expectations." "Good," he said. "I don't want exceptions." She nodded, satisfied with that. Then, after a beat, "I'm also going to need you to forget you've ever seen me in a floral cardigan." He laughed, genuinely surprised out of him. "Done." She smiled and it reached her eyes, and it was nothing like the professional smile she used in meetings. It was quieter than that, realer.
"Thank you, Ryan," she said, "for last night, for this morning, for not making me feel like something to be managed." He held the door open for her.
"You're not something to be managed, Victoria. You're just someone having a hard week." She stepped out into the cool October air and turned to look at him one more time. The wind caught her hair. The city moved around them like it always did, indifferent, relentless, unslowing. But for a moment, standing on that sidewalk, both of them seemed to find something they'd quietly been missing. Not a solution, not a resolution, just the simple, steadying knowledge that someone had seen them, really seen them, and hadn't walked away. Sometimes the bravest thing isn't a grand gesture. Sometimes it's just staying until you hear the lock click. Sometimes it's just showing up the next morning and telling the truth. And sometimes, that's where everything begins.